Awesome. Hello, everybody, and welcome. I am here with my friend Brock Zevan. Brock, welcome.
What's up, buddy? How are you, man?
I'm doing great. We had an amazing first conversation when I had the privilege of appearing on your podcast. We found out we're from miles apart from each other, which is just absolutely crazy. And just for some context, Brock, where are you from?
So I'm from Binghamton, New York, but specifically for you to get details, Johnson City, New York. Yeah, which blew my mind when we started talking. I'm like, wait a minute, I lived in the same hometown.
It's nuts. It's such a small world, and I think we grew up like literally probably like 2-3 miles apart, which is just crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty crazy. It was funny, just like when you kind of keep doing the deeper dive. Like, wait a minute, where in New York? Where in Binghamton? What's what? Well, what road?
Yeah, we were just drilling down, and I'm in such a small world because we'd connected on this website, and liked each other's background before we knew we were talking, and found out we're from so close to each other. Brock, when somebody asks like, "What do you do?" It's not my favorite question, but it's one that we encounter. How
Sure.
do you answer that?
So it is actually became my as a basketball player approaches the foul line, as a golfer approaches his swing, his approach. Like I've actually pretty much have mine rehearsed because when you do podcast or I'm speaking and everything else, like literally it is, how you doing? My name's Brock Zevan. I'm a life coach. I'm a business coach. I'm a real estate agent, and I'm a dad. And like literally, that is who I am as a family dad, as a family guy, as well as the different aspects of what I do between a life coach, which makes me different than the average coach because you have to have a happy life, a happy home. And if you don't have that, we got to start there. And then we get into the entrepreneur and business. Yet I still do real estate. And so that kind of really encompassed everything. And I've been using that now for the last over a year of how I do my intros and all my shows.
That's super cool. And could you give us some background on how you landed here? And totally fine to go in as much or little detail as you want, but those are two big jobs, right? And there's a lot that sort of comes off that. I know that you're doing speaking, you're doing individual coaching, you're doing a lot, and then you've actually got this sort of really thriving real estate business as well. So how'd you land to doing two big jobs?
So real estate was well, I was a teacher first in the education system here. I went to, as you know, in New York, I went to the SUNY school program. So I was at Cortland, SUNY Cortland. Was become a physical educator and PE teacher. So I did that when I first moved down here to Charlotte. And so I was in the education field for 12 years, then got my became an assistant principal, went to Gardner Webb, and I really was going to just be a teacher. I was actually on my way to get my doctorate to become a superintendent. And a buddy of mine approached me and said, "Hey man, you should become a real estate agent." And so as you know, and I think this ties in well with us with where we came from, I had a limiting belief because I was brought up that I'm a school teacher. I went to college for this, and this is what you do the rest of your life. And I remember telling the guy, we was summer break, we were having chicken wings, and he asked that, and I said to him, well, I can't. And he's like, why can't you? I said, well, because I'm a school teacher, and that's I'm being a lifeguard during the summer, and I coach, and that's all I know what to do, and I can continue in the school area of getting my doctorate, becoming a superintendent, moving up, but like I thought that's because that's what they said in high school. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And that's what I was, and that's all I thought I could be. And I thought it was one time to make that decision, and that's what you were. And so when I learned about limiting beliefs, and I was just like, well, let me just try it out. I got into real estate, and I did both. I was a school teacher and real estate agent for 5 years, and it had to be during the transition '07, '08, and '09 when the market crashed. And I started a property management company during the time period because I really wanted to get out of teaching, but I was like, I didn't have enough commission or like enough, sustainable income. So I got into property management, and the company I was with was a small boutique, and they're just like, yeah, you could start a property management division. We don't know anything about it, but if you want to do it, I was like, okay. And so I kind of have that mindset where I was like, well, let me just see what I can do. I ended up getting to 110 doors that I managed within about 2.5 years. And it really became like, this is my view, this is my ticket out of teaching. So I left the small boutique, which became a little bit of a challenge, and I started my own company. But then it got me out of real estate. I mean, it got me out of teaching. And so I did that. That was my ticket. That because my landlords became my sellers, my tenants became my buyers, and I still had the management. So I called it the hat trick, the trifecta, on how I was running my business. I was making about $56,000 as a PE teacher, assistant principal. But when I got into this real estate, I suddenly became a six-figure income very quickly. Yet at the same token, when you make a lot of money with not the same maturity or behaviors and patterns, I end up going down a deep, dark, dangerous path. And that's when alcohol entered into my life. And I got distracted by with so many different things. And so I really let that control me. And I did that for several years to the point that I lost my marriage. My partner and I went in two different directions, and I found out that she embezzled $46,000 into the property management company, and I was still drinking, and I was still doing things that I shouldn't be doing. I had kids. At the time period I just had Brielle. She's now 10. I lived in a $500,000 house. I had everything you can imagine, new cars. Just I was living that lifestyle without any discipline in any aspect of my life. And so I got in big time trouble. The real estate commission came after me, and there was because she wasn't paying people, and people were complaining, filed a complaint, and I was the owner of the company. Mm-hmm. And so basically, long story short, to some aspect of it, because I don't know how much time I have, but I lost my license for a year, and I had no, like I had nothing. I lost everything. I ended up losing both my cars got repossessed, my house went under foreclosure, I lost my marriage, my credit cards were all maxed out. I ended up having to take out my retirement because I couldn't afford my attorneys. I had to have two attorneys. I had to have a forensic attorney. I had to have a regular attorney to be able to handle conversations. 2019, and yes, that literally, when I say 2019, that was 4 years ago. My life pretty much hit rock bottom. Contemplated suicide. It was just, I was a complete disaster. I decided to stop drinking. I said, I read the book, The One Thing. I was like, well, if I could just, if there's just one thing I could do, which I kept thinking about it for several months, but I didn't want drinking to let go, because that was my mask. That was my out for life, or to remove myself from the hell I was in. But then my daughter Brielle became my why. And I knew that if I didn't do something, I would lose her. And so that process kind of established it. Uh, Fast forward like 2 months during 2019, my son Bryce was born. So I went through an entire year of having a newborn with no money, no job, 18 people on my team. Keller Williams let me go. They fired me because I kept basically showing up and I didn't have a real estate license. They had no idea how I was doing it. I hung my license in South Carolina, but they didn't believe. It was just, I was in so much trouble all the time that they're like, you gotta leave. So I went through hell and back several times, and that's part of what I coach now and what I teach. Like my motivational, inspiring story is like this transition that I went to, and I go into it pretty heavily to be able to go through that. But so when people say like, how did you become a life coach? I literally was my life. Like I had DSS called upon me because people were so mad at me. They tried to take my kids. That was the lowest point in my life when they knocked on my door, and somebody from Marsha, remember Marsha's name so well. And they're like, we're here because we need to check your living arrangements for your kids. And and if you could just imagine, and you know me pretty well, Mike, now to some extent, like I present myself in a very, you know, positive way, and just have that being said to me, and like having to be on pins and needles and going through my divorce, that my wife at any point, my ex-wife, could do anything and say like he's a jackass and a drunk and everything else, and you gotta be like, don't let him. I could lose him. And I was scared out of anything. So I learned that in life, that fear will do things to you that nobody else can do. Just like your kids could do things to you that nobody else can do. And so I kept running from everything, everything. And I said to myself, I listened to Eric Thomas, and he talked about the lion and the gazelle. And each morning those two wake up. And I said, you know what? I'm the same way. Each morning I have an opportunity to wake up and stop running away from things and run towards it. And so I started to attack my life in a different demeanor. I started to approach myself, and I used my life lessons to be able to help me get to the position where I am today, that I can handle life coaching for people, and I can share with you, like, I get it. I understand what it's like to be broke and divorced and nothing. And like, I had no money for diapers and kids, and just like every single loss of job, like name it, I've been through it. But it's helped me become the person I am. And one of the things I always like to say is things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And at the time period that you're in a lesson, it's very hard because we want to go to victim mode. But God has a plan, that lesson is things that you have, that He needs you to go through, because there's a blessing on the other side. The problem is He just doesn't tell you how long the lessons are. And my lessons were many years, but they've helped me tremendously become the person I am today. So that's how I became a life coach, and how I became an entrepreneur coach, to help people grow. And we were talking about books, but I'm finishing publishing my book, Turning Scripts into Conversations, because now I help people convert. I help people have conversations with people. I study the DISC personalities. And so all these ingredients is what got me to where I am today, to be able to help people with real estate, for sale by owners and expireds is my specialty, as well as working and understanding people's personal lives, and how for them to become 1% better each day. So that's my long
Correct.
answer, man.
That is an incredible story, and I so appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing those different pieces about your lowest moments. Because I look at you now, and you're doing all these incredible and powerful things. You're speaking, you're coaching at a really high level. You have a great real estate business. You have an amazing family. You have, like, from the outside, you have all the incredible things, right? And a very sort of, I think, enviable life for people. But you sharing the details of your story and the pain that you went through to really sort of get there, I think is not just really sort of inspiring, but very helpful for people that are going through that. If I could go back to one thing that you said early when you were talking about a transition from going from being a teacher and the limiting beliefs that you had to going to working in real estate and doing property management. And I could sort of ask how you apply that same mindset, or if you had to apply that same mindset to your life later, how'd that play out for you, right? Because when you hit rock bottom, what was the process for how do I turn this around? Or what were those limiting beliefs that you had to sort of overcome to sort of step into the new you and then try to help other people with your story?
So um, there's 4 F's that I teach and help people with. And I always tell them, like, I always say, like, write this down. You might not need it right now, but at some point, life will hit you. Whether we like it or not, life will hit you. And life, for me, hit me several times, and I kept getting up. But at the same token, I didn't have the foundation that I needed to get up. It's like getting up in sand and keep falling down. And it's just like, why can't I do this? And it's like, until you decide to look down and be like, okay, my foundation's not very good. So the 4 F's that I teach and help people with is in the beginning, and throughout the time period, my family had to come first, and I needed to find that why. So my family, which happens to be my 2 kids, really resonated with me and helped me. Next was I had to keep fighting. And I tell people I'm not physically fighting, but I'm fighting for my life. I'm fighting for my survival. I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting for everything every day to get up with a depressed mindset, with an addicted personality is not fun. But I had to fight every day and show up. The next two didn't happen, and it took me some time. It took me a couple of years to get to the next two F's, but they elevated me to which I thought I was already at a high level. And then these two next ingredients really took me to the next level. And I think you need all four of them. I strongly believe you do need all four of them. And they can come to you in any capacity. But the next two were faith and favor. And I needed all of these in order to get to the point of where I am today, because there's certain things that God made impossible possible. There's certain things that allowed me to do what I do today. But, faith is the substance of hope that is unseen. And you have to have that in order to be able to know, because when you don't have any drive, you don't have any hope, when you don't have anything to really look forward to, you just want to stay in the covers. You just want to stay in the dark. And so those four F's really have cultivated the person I am today, and have carved out to help other people using these four F's. And when I'm down and out, to help people, and which helped me.
That's really powerful, and I appreciate you going into that level of detail there. What have been some of the biggest hurdles that you've had in the last, like, so you went through the whole space where you had to hit rock bottom, you had to go through all those sort of really painful things with your family, you had to go through all those different pieces with regards to your credit and your work integrity and all of those different pieces. But since sort of building back up and making the commitment to yourself that I'm going to be this better person, I'm going to lean on these four F's. What have been your biggest hurdles and some of your biggest lessons that have occurred since?
So, one of the ones I didn't tell you about, but I'll tell you now. You know, there's Jim Rohn says there's two things that will happen to you in life, no matter who you are: death and taxes. One of my hardest journeys is during that time period of what I was struggling. I didn't pay my taxes for 4 years. So as I told you, DSS knocked on my door. I had several people knocking on my door, between attorneys, sheriff's offices, of being served many different things. And one of them was I was being served to go to jail because I didn't pay my taxes. And so one of the things that I now teach is the foundations of finances to help people, because I feel like entrepreneurs really don't understand taxes and don't understand how to save money and how to be disciplined in it. And that's why I like the book Atomic Habits by James Clear, is because I can give you all the money in the world, but within a month or within a year, you'll be broke again because your habits and behaviors haven't changed. So I was $153,000 in debt, and it was it was hard. And to know that I was possibly going to jail, and I'm looking at my kids, like I had to change things very quickly. And so that in itself was like, between that and the DSS, because there's a chance I could lose my kids, was like my bottom. To be honest with you, suicide. Some people say, well, like, what about when we're going to run into a tree and commit suicide? Like, I don't think I would have. Um, I just think that was like my way. That was like my out, and that was inside my head. See, when you bring outside parties like DSS and IRS involved in it, like, you have no control over that. So, like, anything I read this, I read the Serenity Prayer, and recommend to people the Serenity Prayer is understanding what you can control and can't control, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I knew I can control every single attitude, action that I do, but I can't control those other people. And that's when it started to get really scary for me. Like, you need to get yourself in a controllable situation as much as you possibly can. And your choices that you are making aren't getting you there, Brock. And so I started to work on that on a consistent basis. And I started to put disciplines in my life, between reading 10 pages a day, 20 minutes of cardio, prayers, um, journal, like all these different things. I get up at 4:40 in the morning, like all these things I can control. I started placing them in the beginning part of my day. And then I started to build off of that where I could focus on all the things I can control. Now things go sideways, of course. But by that time, I'm always like, well, hell, I've freaking gone through 5 hours, 6 hours of controllable items. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but that's kind of like my biggest low points and using those four F's to get through them.
I love what you just said right there, right? Is putting everything in your control that you possibly can. And there's this quote that I love that is from Tim Ferriss that if you win the morning, you win the day, right?
Yep.
And there's something about a really sort of focused and disciplined regimen that you're going through every morning and these daily non-negotiables that I'm going to hit these KPIs, I'm going to do these kind of things, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it sustainably. And I think there's a careful balance about what those things are and what they look like. But I think your point is really good. If you're controlling what you can control, you can't always control the outcome, but you can control the inputs. And if you're choosing the right inputs, I think you're increasing your luck surface area over time so that your chances of sort of being successful, just go up exponentially. And if you continue to sort of do that and do the right things and focus in the right ways, you just broaden that look surface area and you open up more opportunities for yourself.
Yep. Absolutely, man.
What books are Sorry about that hit,
You
Mike.
said,
Yeah, I cut out for a second there. What books or podcasts have you found like most impactful and most helpful? And you've referenced a few. I mean, Atomic Habits is an incredible book. But what are some other ones that you've really enjoyed or pulled lessons from in your journey?
Um, I do a class on make your bed. The Navy SEAL guy, McCavern, no Mac. You've already you know which one it is, but make your bed. He's in the Navy SEALs. He was spoke at the Tennessee graduation. So that's a really good book. Um, is business. I have so many in my head. I'm just trying to. The Seven Habits for Highly Successful People by Steve Covey is a really good one. Extreme Ownership, I really enjoy, has been a good one. As far as speaking, coaching for those entrepreneurs out there, I think Dan Kennedy, Speak to Sell, is a very, very good book, especially entrepreneurs that are trying to sell a product. Um, would be a really good one. And then the one that I'm really leaning into heavily that I strongly recommend is the 21 Irrefutable Laws by John Maxwell. Now that being working on my certification, being coached by John Maxwell, like I'm really studying it intensely, and that book really, really has, especially in leadership entrepreneur world, is something that I really recommend. And for those that are fighting, for those that are trying to get themselves out of their mindset, the book Relentless by Tim Grover is a very good book that I also recommend.
That is
And then
incredibly
what else? Oh,
helpful.
podcasts.
Yeah.
Podcasts. I listen to the John Maxwell podcast. I listen to a lot of YouTube with Eric Thomas, Les Brown. I listen to this other one, this new one I have. It's called BAM, BAM, Brokers Agent Media, I believe is what it is, but it's like $6 a month. But that's been really good in the real estate and entrepreneur world, to be honest with you. That one I really like. I listen to a lot of YouTube stuff, to be honest with you. I'm just starting to get into a little bit more podcast, but I just like, it depends on what mood I'm in. I'll just put in like what I'm dealing with, and I'll just put in YouTube like motivation or podcast, and I just listen to that.
Those are some fabulous recommendations, and certainly you just added to my reading list in a really really positive way. So I appreciate that, Brock. If you had to leave everybody with one message, and then mention where people can get in touch with you, what would that message be? And then how do people go about finding you?
So I think the biggest thing is you have to be selfish with yourself, because if you don't have your own personal self, if you don't understand yourself, I would go in and study your personality, understand your love language, The Five Love Languages is another great book to do. The Tony Robbins Disc Assessment is another thing to do. I don't think enough people really know who they are. And you can't analyze and start talking to other people if you don't even understand yourself, let alone in relationships with your significant other and everything else. Like that was the biggest thing is to know yourself, study yourself, understand your personalities. I'm getting ready to take Patrick Lenciani, The Six Geniuses. It's another great book, but there's a $25 to take this assessment. But in order to understand yourself is the greatest thing you can do for you. Jim Rohn says more people work harder on their jobs than on themselves. And when I started to work on myself, my life changed. When I started to put in disciplines, my life changed. And just try to be 1% better each and every day. And I have an affirmation that I say each and every morning on my mindset show is something good is going to happen to me. Something good is going to happen through me. And see how many people you can affect each and every day in a positive way. Um, for those that are looking to connect with me, you can go to brockzevan.com. That has a lot of my stuff about me. You can also go to brockzevan.com. And then part of my coaching platform is bz3enterprises.com. That has all my coaching products. I do a prayer call, national prayer call. I do a mindset morning show each and every morning. So it has all that content. You can take a look at me on Facebook. So just very blessed and fortunate to be able to Mike, to see you again and to be able to have this opportunity with you. I really do enjoy talking to you. And we talked before the show about just like, hey, can we pick your brain? Let me be the devil's advocate. And so I really, really enjoy this. And I appreciate the opportunity you gave me today. And hopefully we were able to touch somebody and to give them that opportunity that they too can do it.
Brock, I so appreciate your vulnerability and just your willingness to sort of share, but also just the story about where you were versus sort of where you are, and where you're continuing to go. And I think you're somebody that's taken some of the sort of worst pains that anybody can sort of experience or deal with in life and turn those into a really positive thing. And my sense from just sort of knowing you for a short while is that the person you are in a year is going to be better, happier, all the things than you are right now because of the work that you're putting in. So thank you. I really
Amen,
truly
man.
appreciate it, and yeah, just so excited to see where you go and what you do.
Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate it. And let's stay connected.
All right, sounds good. Thank you, sir.
See you, buddy.